Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. How do you know if you're a hobbyist or an industrialist? Is it a hobby or is it a business, depending on how you conduct yourself? I don't know that you want to make that distinction, but I'm going to point out some things that I think make me think that somebody would be treating it as a hobby versus treating it as a business or an industry. But thanks, sponsors, all of which pretty much are in the business. Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scott Auctions, Tops, Upper Deck, and Panini. So they're not only businesses in the industry, but they're definitely for profit, as our company was when I was in charge. On the other hand, I started out being a hobbyist. I was a collector, and then I probably was an investor, which really would be a business or an industry term. And then I moved to being a dealer now, I think, because I'm mainly trying to sell cards that I don't need. I've mentioned 1% a month. How do you know whether it's a hobby or a business? If it's a hobby, you are expecting to spend money on your hobby. You're not necessarily thinking I'm going to break even, and that'd be nice, but it doesn't have to be. Now, if you're going to lose big money, then you'd like it to be a business because the IRS will allow you to make deductions of a business that loses money. And so you can actually get a write-off against your other income if you have a bona fide business. And a bona fide business is determined by the IRS as trying to make a profit and probably making a profit. They used to say at least 2 out of 7 years. So if it's a hobby, you can't deduct your losses and your expenses. So it's nice for it to be a business. So if it's a business, you're expected to make money. The hobbyist probably has more passion than the business person or industry person. If a hobbyist gets a big card in a break, are they going to sell it? They might, if it's not their team or their player. But the investor, the business person, the industry person, they're just going to see dollar signs. The hobbyist gets more emotional connection. If you're a hobbyist, can you spend 10% of your income on a hobby? I think you could. It depends on your family situation. If you're a single guy, I maybe spent more than that when I was single, but I've been married for a really long time and I don't think of it that way. I have more money now than I used to, but I don't spend big bucks on cards. I'm enjoying what, again, is a hobby. The business aspect, maybe it's split in that in my buying, it's like a hobby. And when I'm selling, it's more like a business because I love buying cards. It can't be a hobby if you're a dealer. I push back on that because I think that if you're a part-time dealer, like back in the day, 50 years ago, there really wasn't any opportunity to have a side gig. It was just a hobby. You went to card shows and you sold your duplicates. You bought some collections, kept the ones you needed. Now, once you set up a store, you've got a legitimate business. Like I say, you're paying taxes. Another point is that if you're a hobbyist, maybe you're not paying taxes. And if you're making enough money, then the IRS may not like that because if you do make money, even if it's on a hobby, you're making income. You're buying something and selling it for more. You've made income. Just like if you go gambling and if you did make money gambling, you would be expected to report that. If you were audited, you'd get in trouble. Even a hobbyist could pay taxes on there, but you can't deduct your losses. People talk about buying, selling, holding. There's all kinds of things in the literature about that and content creators. Should I buy it? Should I sell it? Should I hold it? That happens every day, whether you're a collector or an investor or a dealer. You're trying to figure out what you want to do. However, if you're a hobbyist and you're just a collector, you just think, I love this card. Of course, I'm going to hold it. Now that I have it, I may not buy another one. I don't want to sell it. I think I moved pretty quickly into some business aspect because I was looking to buy stuff. If I want something, I want to buy it at a good price. And that's a business mindset. The hobbyist is thinking, I guess what I'm realizing as I'm doing this is that people can vacillate between treating it as a hobby and treating it as a business, as an industry, because you passionately pursue a card, but then 6 months later, you're trading up. You're getting rid of that card that you loved to get a better card. That's sort of a hobby thing, but it seems financial. Hobbyists certainly consider the value of their collection. It's not that. But if you're a hobbyist and you think your player is going to go down, you don't necessarily sell. So are flippers in it for the business? I think so. They're not emotionally connected. They enjoy the thrill. They're like gambling. And I guess there's hobby type of gambling, which is on a smaller scale, and the business of gambling, the industry of gambling, where you're routinely placing bigger bets Card collecting can be profitable. In fact, you'd expect it to be profitable. I expect it to be profitable, whether that's a hobby or a business. Gambling, it's pretty hard to make money gambling. You have to have an edge, and most people that think they have an edge really do not. Again, if you're overly concerned about making money, you're treating it as a business. I made money, but I didn't enter into it thinking I would make money. As I was asked on a podcast, when did you ever buy something that you just knew it was going to go up? I rarely did that. I bought it because I liked it and I thought it was a good deal at the time. I didn't need it to go up. I thought I was buying it right at that point. If it was a second copy of a card, it was something I thought I could trade that for something else I want. And I used to do that a lot more. I don't do it as much. Again, that's what a hobbyist would do, would trade cards for other cards they like even more. The business person probably is selling it and then rebuying something. Once I sell something, I got the money. And then when I have the money, I'm thinking, I want to spend the money on what? I want to go out to dinner, or I want to go to a ball game, or do I want to buy a card or a box? And so in the business aspect, as the hobbyist, I'm interested in buying cards and getting cards that I like. The business person says, which I'm putting myself more in the business category as I speak, is that when I go to a card show, I'm just looking for good deals. I could say that's the way I hobby, but really I approach this as a business because I'm not buying so that I can just put them away. I'm buying so I can process them, sort them, and then put them where they need to go. So if something is priced right, I will buy it. Again, that is not the way a hobbyist does. As a hobbyist, I had a want list. These are the cards I needed to complete my sets. These are the players I collected. And now I'm not doing that. The hobbyist probably does concern himself or herself about cash flow, whereas a business absolutely does. A business that has poor cash flow either needs to borrow or is going to have problems. You got to pay the rent. You got to pay employees. It might be end of the month or end of the quarter, end of the year. But on whatever your time horizon is, your cash flow needs to make sense. If you're a hobbyist and you're basically taking 10%, really you ought to be saving 10% and not saving in cards, but saving in other traditional investments. But if you were making enough money that you were taking care of your family and you put 10% toward buying cards, no problem with that. The percentages don't matter if you make, there are people in the hobby that make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or millions of dollars a year, and they don't think of it in terms of 10%. They just think of it as they probably increase the size of the card they're thinking about acquiring because they can. Okay. It still could be a hobby for them because they just have the joy of ownership. But so many of them, I think, really are thinking, yeah, but I'm going to make money too. Another way to determine if you have a hobby or a business is I don't think hobbyists have systems. Again, that makes me not a hobbyist because when I go to the card shows, I've got a little bit of a system of here are the kind of things I like to buy and I think are good deals. So my own system betrays me of being a pure collector, a pure hobbyist. Obviously, I love the price guide aspect of there's a value for every card, and it's hard to know what that is. That's why I started my company in the first place. But if you do know or have some understanding that a card is worth X and you have a chance to buy it for half X, the hobbyist might say, yeah, but I don't want it. That's not how I want to spend my money, whether it's the cash flow or I have X dollars to spend at this show. I want to spend it on stuff I really want. I'm not like that. I just think I want to spend it on stuff that's a good deal. And in there are going to be some good deals on players I collect that are local or players that I know or something that go on my card wall. But I'm not too concerned about the cash flow. And yet, if you see me at a show, I'm not breaking the bank. I'm spending hundreds of dollars, but not usually spending thousands of dollars. I probably could, but when you lug around a dollar box, if you have a 2-row box, that's hundreds of dollars, especially if they're in top loaders or card savers. You buy $500 box cards, that's $500 at most. I'm hoping to get a discount when I get a quantity. That's probably not what a hobbyist does. And I say that my hobby is buying dollar box cards. I think if I just kept them, maybe it's a hobby, but the fact that I'm selling 2/3 of them or trying to sell them, I don't sell them instantly. I load them up on these platforms and hopefully get sales over time. The other system I don't do that I could do if I were to get some really special glasses is to buy raw or buy undergraded cards and crack them or submit them. Even playing one grading company off another. There's nothing illegal about it, nothing wrong about it. It requires eyesight, which I used to have. I think my eyesight is not good enough. I'd have to get some really high light and magnification. And that's not fun for me. That sounds like a job. I'm realizing I'm trying to make it a hobby, and yet I've got some elements of where it's a business for me. And I'm okay with that, but I'm not borrowing money. I don't have a line of credit for my sole proprietorship. I'm staying within my limits, and I'm acknowledging that some companies out there are very much looking at this as an industry. But if they lose sight of the collecting mindset, that ultimately the end consumer, the final consumer, is a hobbyist that wants to hold on to this card, whether it's $1 million card or a $1 card. There's got to be a home for that card. I started out trying to figure out if there's a clear demarcation between somebody that treats this as a hobby and somebody treats it as a business. I'm coming to the realization is that it's both for me and it's both for many of you. But if you don't care, if you're only interested in making money, I feel sad for you. Just go to a show and find something, see something you haven't seen, and to be able to purchase it, take it home, grade it, put it on the mantle or put it on my card wall. That is fun. And whether it's a business or a hobby, it's just fun. And the more fun you have, the more you can emote about it, the more I think it's a hobby. It's just a cold world. I think it's just an industry and we just have a commodity of cards. And like I say, they're not fungible. We've learned in the last years that every PSA 9 is not equal to a BGS 9. Every PSA 9 is not equal to another PSA 9, much less an SGC 9 or anything else, because cards are not fungible. Every one is a little bit different, and that makes for opportunity, whether something is weak or strong. I think hobbyists care about that only in the sense, as I've heard from Mike Moynihan, and Jeremy Lee's doing the same thing. They're looking to get cards that look good for the grade. To me, that's what a hobbyist would do. But there is a business strategy associated with that. But those guys, I think, are hobbyists in that they love the cards. If you love the cards more than you love money, then you're a hobbyist. If you love money more than you love cards, then maybe it's a business. So thanks, everybody. These are my own ramblings about what it means to be a hobbyist. So thanks, and see you in a couple days.
The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards is doing all right.
You know, sometimes at the end of a movie, there'll be, after the credits, some more stuff, some funny outtakes. This is not that, but for my faithful listeners who are still hanging in there, note that today is January 29th. January 31st is the deadline for reporting for 1099s to go out, which is for other kinds of income. The Wall Street Journal has been writing that finally they are going to enforce the side gig reporting of income. And it's not even income, it's just revenue. So if you're doing significant eBay business, really to the tune of $5,000 now, they've talked about $600, but that may be phased in. When you're talking about your hobby income, that's not the same thing as your hobby revenue. Now, I report all of my revenue, all of my income, and income is your revenue minus your expenses. I've always fully reported my card income, and I pay taxes on it. And probably you're going to have to as well. You could still be a hobbyist, but if you sell enough, and even whether you call yourself a hobbyist, if you get a 1099 from eBay because you sold more than $5,000 worth of stuff, you're going to have to pay an accountant or do it yourself to figure out that you actually had expenses that can be set off against your money that you pay. If you buy something on eBay for $10 and then 2 weeks later sell it for $8, you lost $2. You can use that loss if you have a bunch of other gains. You need to get an accountant for this, but to me, it's unlikely that when you're selling some of these items that it would be a capital gain. I think it's going to be ordinary income if you're buying and selling. If you have a card that you had for a long time and you sell one card for more than $5,000, perhaps that's a capital gain. Auction houses are probably affected by this, even personal items. And eBay's not the only one. The next few years, they're going to tighten up. I would say get used to it. At any rate, this week is the time when those things are being mailed out. If you get one, don't panic, but don't ignore it, whether you're a hobbyist or a business. You're in business, in the eyes of the IRS if you sold more than $5,000 worth of stuff. And if you don't have the basis of what you paid for it, they're going to assume all $5,000 is profit. And if you don't pay taxes on that or don't report it, there are penalties and interest. Just a sober note, if you get those notices, when you pay taxes, that means you did make money. You made money. And so you're giving the government a percentage of it. And it's a percentage I wish were smaller, but it isn't. I'm going to obey the law, and I encourage you to do that too. So thanks, everybody.